I never imagined I would end up homeless last night. I had nothing. No food, no money, and my 7-year-old daughter was burning up with fever in my arms. I had exactly $43 between us and the street. And then... My name is Sarah Chen. 24 hours ago, I had a home, a job, a plan. But eviction happens fast when you're 3 months behind on rent. I worked at a packaging plant until they laid off half the staff. By the time I scraped together enough for a new deposit, every shelter in the city was full. Winter overflow capacity, they called it. There were waiting lists that stretched weeks. My daughter Lily had been sick for 3 days. Started as a cold. Got worse. I spent my last cash on children's Tylenol and a gas station sandwich we split. The hospital emergency room turned us away. No insurance. No primary care physician. No proof of address. They gave us a pamphlet about free clinics and sent us back into the rain. So there we were, sitting in the rain behind Mercy General Hospital. The cardboard we'd been using as shelter had dissolved an hour ago. Lily's breathing was shallow, too fast. Her skin was too hot. And I was counting my money for the 100th time, like somehow the bills would multiply if I just looked hard enough. $43. That's what stood between my daughter and... I couldn't even finish that thought. Tomorrow I'd planned to get to the social services office when it opened. Tonight, I just needed to keep my daughter alive. That's it. That's all I could think about. 1 more hour. Then 1 more after that. That's when I heard expensive shoes on wet pavement. Click, click, click. Moving fast. Then a voice. Male, frustrated, desperate. I don't care what the statement says, Marcus. The card works. It's a black card. It doesn't just stop working. I looked up. The man pacing under the hospital's covered entrance wore a suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my old rent. Even in the dim light, I recognized him. Everyone would. Dominic Reeves. The Dominic Reeves. Tech entrepreneur, philanthropist, the face of a dozen magazine covers. The man who'd built an empire on apps that promised to revolutionize human connection. This is impossible, he was saying. I have a meeting in 2 hours. I can't just. Marcus, I'm at a hospital. My father's in surgery and apparently every single one of my cards has been frozen because someone decided that. He stopped. His face went pale. What do you mean criminal investigation? He ended the call. Just stood there, staring at his phone like it had personally betrayed him. Then he looked up. And his eyes met mine. I should have looked away. I was homeless, soaking wet, holding a feverish child. I was invisible. The kind of person men like Dominic Reeves looked through, not at. But he didn't look through me. He looked at me. And I saw something in his expression that stopped me cold. Recognition. Not like he knew who I was, but like he recognized what I was feeling. Because he was feeling it too. He walked toward me. I tensed, pulled Lily closer. He stopped a few feet away. I'm sorry to bother you, he said, and his voice was different now. Quieter. Uncertain. But I need help. I almost laughed. You need help. My father's in surgery. Emergency bypass. I flew in from San Francisco 2 hours ago and He stopped, running a hand through his hair. Water dripped from his sleeve. My business partner. He's been arrested. SEC investigation. Money laundering. They've frozen all the company accounts, my personal accounts, everything. I can't access my money. I can't pay for my father's surgery. I can't even buy a cup of coffee. His voice cracked. The hospital needs payment authorization in the next hour or they'll stop the procedure. My father will die. Call someone, I said flatly. I did. My lawyer, my accountant, my assistant. Everyone's scrambling. But the hospital needs payment now. My father will die. He looked at Lily, really looked at her. Your daughter needs a doctor. The hospital won't see her. No insurance. That's illegal. They have to stabilize her. I gave him a look. You want to explain that to the intake nurse who already sent us away? He stared at me for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he sat down. Right there on the wet pavement in his $1,000 suit. He sat down beside me. What's her name? Lily. How long has she been sick? 3 days. Started as a cold. Got worse. And that's when I saw it. Really saw it. This man, this billionaire who'd had everything. He understood. He knew what it felt like to be powerless. To watch someone you love suffer and have no way to help them. We were the same in that moment. Both of us falling. Both of us desperate. Both of us forgotten by a world that only cares about you when you're useful. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'll make you a deal. I don't have anything you want. You have $43. I went very still. How did you? You were counting it earlier. I saw. He met my eyes. I need $20. Enough to get through the hospital payment desk, show some kind of faith payment while my people sort out the accounts. In exchange, I'll make sure your daughter sees a doctor tonight. A real doctor. Full examination, treatment, whatever she needs. You can't promise that. I'm Dominic Reeves, he said, and there was something strange in his voice. Not arrogance. Something almost like desperation. 2 hours ago that name meant something. Maybe it still does. Maybe there's enough goodwill in this building that someone will listen. I looked down at Lily. Her skin was too hot. Her breathing too fast. I thought about the social services office. Closed until morning. The shelter waiting list. The clinics that wouldn't open until next week. I thought about how quickly you can fall and how slowly you climb back up. And I thought, what if he's telling the truth? What if $20 could save cash? Counted out $20. My hands were shaking. If he was lying, if this was some sick joke, my daughter could die. But something in his eyes told me he wasn't lying. He was just as desperate as I was. Maybe more, because he wasn't used to being powerless. I held out the money. If you're lying, I said quietly, I'll find you. I don't care how rich you are. His hand shook as he took it. If I'm lying, I'll deserve whatever you do to me. He stood up, water streaming from his clothes, and walked back into the hospital. I held Lily and waited. Because waiting was all I knew how to do anymore. 15 minutes felt like 15 hours. I sat there in the rain, holding Lily, wondering if I'd just made the worst decision of my life. $20. That was food for tomorrow. That was survival. And I'd given it to a stranger. A rich stranger who probably had dozens of ways to solve his problems that I couldn't even imagine. I started making plans for if he didn't come back. Where we could go. Who might help. But the truth was, there was nowhere to go. No one to help. We were on our own. We'd always been on our own. Then I heard footsteps. A nurse came out. Not the one who'd turned us away before. An older woman with kind eyes and a wheelchair. Sarah Chen. She said. I'm here for Lily. I looked past her. Dominic stood in the doorway, watching. He nodded once. He'd kept his word. The nurse helped me get Lily into the wheelchair. "Let's get this little one looked at," she said gently. As we moved toward the entrance, I heard Dominic's voice again, talking to someone at the payment desk. "Yes, I understand the situation. But I need you to understand mine. My father is in surgery right now. Dr. Patterson is operating. I'm asking for 1 hour. 60 minutes. If my accounts aren't unfrozen by then, I'll sign over my watch, my car keys, whatever collateral you need. But please don't stop the surgery." The receptionist was unmoved. "Sir, we need payment authorization or the procedure will be suspended." $20, Dominic said, and I heard something break in his voice. "That's what I have. $20 and a name that used to mean something. Is that enough for my father's life?" I stopped walking, turned back. The nurse looked at me questioningly, but I ignored her. I walked back to that desk and pulled out my remaining $23, every cent I had left in the world, and I put it down next to his $43, I said. For his father. The silence in that lobby was absolute. Dominic stared at me like I'd just spoken in a language he didn't know existed. "You're homeless," he said. It wasn't a question. "So are you," I answered. "At least for tonight." The receptionist looked between us, clearly trying to process what was happening. A homeless woman, with a sick child, giving her last money, to save a billionaire's father. It didn't make sense. It wasn't rational. It wasn't smart. But in that moment it was the only thing that made sense. Because he'd helped me first. He'd kept his word when he could have walked away. And I knew what it felt like to watch someone you love slip away while you stood there powerless. The receptionist picked up the phone, called the financial office. They made us wait another 20 minutes. 20 minutes that felt like 20 years. But finally they authorized it. The surgery would continue. Dominic's father would live. At least for tonight. Lily was admitted with pneumonia. They put her on 4 antibiotics and oxygen. A young doctor told me she would have been in serious danger if we'd waited another day. "You did the right thing bringing her in," he said. I didn't correct him. Didn't explain that I'd tried hours earlier and been turned away. That it took a disgraced tech CEO and my last $43 to get through the door. They let me stay in Lily's room. Hospital policy said family only, but the nurse who'd brought the wheelchair found me a cot and didn't ask questions. I fell asleep to the sound of monitors beeping and my daughter breathing easier than she had in days. We were safe. For the first time in 3 months, we were safe. I woke up to sunlight and the smell of coffee. Dominic sat in the chair by the window, 2 cups from the hospital cafeteria on the table beside him. He looked terrible. His suit was ruined, his hair was a mess, and he had the hollow-eyed look of someone who hasn't slept. But he was smiling. "Your daughter?" I asked. He nodded. "Made it through surgery. He's in recovery. They think he'll be okay." He paused. "Thank you. I didn't do anything. You gave me everything you had." We sat in silence for a moment. Then he said something I'll never forget. "I've spent 48 years learning how to be successful. Last night you taught me how to be human." They gave us a room with 2 cots, a shared bathroom down the hall, and rules posted on every wall. No drugs. No alcohol. No visitors after 8 p.m. Lights out at 10. It was the most beautiful place I'd ever seen. We had walls. A roof. A door that locked. Lily had a bed. I cried for an hour that first night, just staring at that door, knowing no one could get to us. That we were safe. At least for a while. Dominic's reality was different, but just as brutal. His father survived the surgery, but the media had already gotten hold of the story. Not the part about us helping each other. The part about the investigation, the fraud, the billions lost. They showed footage of his penthouse in San Francisco, his vacation home in Aspen, his private jet. They interviewed former employees who'd lost their jobs, investors who'd lost money. Everyone had an opinion about what kind of man he was. Then someone posted a video. Security camera footage from the hospital lobby. Grainy but clear enough. You could see me, homeless, wet, holding my sick daughter, walking to the payment desk. You could see me putting down my last $23 next to Dominic's $20. The caption read, "Homeless woman saves billionaire's father with her last money." It went viral. Not in a good way. The comments were brutal. Why would she help him? That money could have fed her kid. This is fake. Has to be staged. Billionaire takes advantage of desperate mother. People who'd never been homeless, never been desperate, never had to make impossible choices. They all had opinions about what I should have done. Some people called me a hero. Some called me an idiot. Some said I was lying, that the whole thing was a publicity stunt for Dominic's comeback. No one asked me what I thought. No one asked why I did it. I was just a character in a story people told to make themselves feel something. While I was adjusting to shelter life, Dominic was learning what poverty actually means. His lawyers managed to unfreeze enough money for basic expenses. About $2,000. Enough for a cheap motel room and gas station food. Not enough for the penthouse or the private jet or the lifestyle he'd built his identity on. He spent 2 weeks in a motel on the highway. The kind of place that rents by the hour and doesn't ask questions. Roaches in the bathroom. Stains on the carpet. He told me later that he spent the first 3 nights just staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out how his life had gotten there. From boardrooms to this. From billions to nothing. He tried calling people. Friends, investors, business contacts. Out of 47 calls, 3 people answered. 1 hung up when he asked for help. Another said he'd pray for him. The third offered to buy his car for 10% of what it was worth. That's when he understood. He'd never had friends. He'd had connections. People who wanted something from him. Now that he had nothing to give, they disappeared. I got a job interview. Data entry at a law firm. Nothing glamorous. Minimum wage, entering information into spreadsheets all day. But it was work. It was steady. I borrowed clothes from the shelter donation bin. Did the interview. Got the job. Started the following Monday. Lily went back to school. She was behind from missing so many days, but her teacher was kind. Set up a tutoring schedule. Gave her books to take home. Slowly we were building something. Not a life yet, but the foundation of one. Dominic, meanwhile, was trying to figure out what to do with $2,000 and a name that had become toxic. He couldn't get investors. Couldn't get meetings. Couldn't even get a callback from people who'd once competed to have dinner with him. So he did something I didn't expect. He came back to the hospital. He found me leaving work one evening. 3 weeks after that night in the parking lot. He looked different. Wearing jeans and a borrowed sweater that didn't fit quite right. His hair needed cutting. He'd lost weight. But there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Purpose. I bought a food truck, he said. Just like that. No greeting, no small talk. What? A food truck. Used all the money I had left. It's beat up, needs work, but it runs. I'm going to park it here. Outside the hospital. Sell sandwiches and coffee to hospital staff, patients' families, people waiting for news about surgeries. He looked at me. People like we were. I didn't know what to say. That's your comeback plan? A food truck. He smiled, and it was the first real smile I'd seen on him. It's not a comeback. It's a start. I spent 20 years building companies that connected millions of people, but I never actually connected with anyone. This time, I'm going to do it different. One sandwich at a time. One conversation at a time. One person who needs help at a time. He asked if I'd help him on weekends. Not for much, he could barely pay himself, but for something. $20 a day. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. I said yes. Partly because I needed the money, but mostly because I saw what he was building, and I wanted to be part of it. We worked side by side. Me taking orders, him cooking. We talked while we worked. About our lives before. About the night that brought us together. About what it felt like to be invisible. He told me about board meetings where decisions affecting thousands of people were made over catered lunches. I told him about standing in welfare lines for 6 hours only to be told I'd filled out the wrong form. We were teaching each other. He was learning what poverty actually meant, not as a statistic or a problem to solve, but as a daily reality. I was learning that having money didn't make you immune to pain, that you could lose everything and still have to figure out how to survive the next day. One Saturday, a woman approached the truck. She was crying. Said her husband was in surgery and she'd been there for 12 hours and hadn't eaten because she couldn't leave in case the doctor came out with news. Dominic gave her a sandwich and coffee. Refused payment. Just pass it forward someday, he said. With handouts. With practical help. Money when it was needed most. Connections to jobs. Resources. And most importantly, dignity. Being seen as a person, not a problem. What would you call it? I asked. He looked at me. Second chances. Because that's what we both got. A second chance. Not because we deserved it. Not because we earned it. Just because someone chose to help when they closed the truck. We sat on the tailgate eating leftover sandwiches. I've been thinking, Dominic said, about what happened to us. How we helped each other when we both had nothing. And I keep wondering, what if that's the model? Model for what? For actually helping people. Not charity. Not programs. Just people who've been at the bottom helping other people who are there now. Because they remember what it felt like. He pulled out a notebook. Started sketching ideas. A network of people who'd experienced homelessness, who'd gotten back on their feet, helping others do the same. Not with pity. Not with handouts. With practical help. Money when it was needed most. Connections to jobs. Resources. And most importantly, dignity. Being seen as a person, not a problem. What would you call it? I asked. He looked at me. Second chances. Because that's what we both got. A second chance. Not because we deserved it. Not because we earned it. Just because someone chose to help when they didn't have to. We started small. So small it barely counted. Dominic set up a jar on the food truck counter. Pay what you can, the sign said. Can't pay. That's okay too. Someone already covered it. The honor system. Most people thought we were crazy. Some took advantage. But slowly, something beautiful started happening. A nurse who'd been coming every morning for coffee put a 20 in the jar. For whoever needs it, she said. A construction worker who'd been homeless himself 5 years ago started buying extra sandwiches and telling us to give them to people who couldn't pay. A grandmother whose grandkids lived with her because their parents were struggling started volunteering on Sundays, making her famous mac and cheese to add to our menu. The food truck became more than food. It became a place where people felt seen, where a doctor could stand next to a homeless man and they'd both just be people waiting for coffee, where you could tell the truth about your struggles and not be judged, where you could receive help and not feel ashamed. 3 months after we started, a man named Marcus came to the truck. He'd been living in his car for 2 months after losing his job as an accountant. His kids were staying with his ex-wife. He was trying to pull together enough money for first and last month's rent on an apartment so he could see them again. He needed $300. Might as well have been $3 million. Dominic and I talked about it. We had maybe $400 in the jar. Our emergency fund. If we gave it to Marcus, we'd have nothing. If he disappeared, we'd never see it again. What do you think? Dominic asked me. I thought about the parking lot. About $43. About trust. Let's give it to him, I said. So we did. $300. No contract. No collateral. Just trust. Marcus cried. Actually cried. Said he'd pay us back as soon as he could. We told him the same thing. Just pass it forward someday. 6 weeks later, Marcus came back. He had a job. Had his apartment. His kids were visiting on weekends. He put $300 back in the jar. Plus 50 extra. For whoever needs it next, he said. And that's when we knew. It could work. People who'd been helped would help others. The chain could actually grow. Word spread. More people came needing help. More people came wanting to help. The jar wasn't enough anymore. We needed structure, organization, a real plan. But neither of us knew how to run a nonprofit. Dominic had built tech companies. I'd worked in packaging. We were making it up as we went. We made mistakes. Gave money to someone who disappeared. Trusted the wrong people. Got overwhelmed. There were nights I wanted to quit. Nights Dominic wondered if we were just delaying the inevitable collapse. But then something would happen. A family would get housed. Someone would find a job. A person we'd helped would come back and volunteer. And we'd remember why we started. That's when Abigail Tran showed up. She was a journalist covering homelessness in the city. She'd heard about the food truck, about what we were trying to do. She wanted to write a story. I was immediately suspicious. The last media coverage had turned my worst moment into entertainment. People had judged, mocked, analyzed. I wasn't eager to go through that again. But Abigail was different. She didn't want soundbites or drama. She wanted truth. She spent 2 weeks just watching, talking to people, understanding how it actually worked. She interviewed Marcus, interviewed the nurse who'd helped us that first night, interviewed Dominic and me, but mostly she listened. When her article came out, it wasn't about me or Dominic. It was about the model. About reciprocity versus charity. About what happens when people help people instead of programs helping problems. The headline read, Second Chances. What a food truck and $43 taught us about dignity. It was honest. It was true. Abigail's article went viral. Everything. Within a week, we had donations pouring in. $5,000. Then 10. Then 20. People from across the country wanting to support what we were building. Companies offering partnerships. Other cities asking how they could replicate the model. It was overwhelming. In a good way at first. We could help more families. Expand beyond the food truck. Maybe even open a real community center. Dominic was excited. This was the kind of scaling he understood. But I was nervous. Because I'd learned something in those months of homelessness. When you have nothing, people ignore you. But when you start to succeed, that's when they pay attention. And not always in good ways. The first attack came from an unexpected place. A local blogger wrote a piece questioning our model. Is second chances actually helping or just enabling dependency? The headline read, "He argued that giving people money without requirements was irresponsible, that we were making it too easy, that real help required accountability, drug testing, mandatory job training, that our feel-good approach was naive." Then a local news station picked it up. They interviewed people we'd helped, but edited the footage to make them look helpless, dependent. They found one who'd taken our help and relapsed, and they made him the face of our failure. The segment ended with the anchor asking, "Are programs like Second Chances solving homelessness or perpetuating it?" The comments were brutal. "This is why you don't give money to homeless people. They're teaching people to be victims. That billionaire is just trying to rebuild his image." People who'd never been homeless, never been desperate, suddenly had strong opinions about what we were doing wrong. Donations slowed, then stopped. Some people asked for their money back. A few companies that had offered partnerships quietly withdrew. And I started getting recognized on the street, not with kindness but with judgment. "You're that woman," someone said in the grocery store. "The one who gives money away with no strings attached. Must be nice to play with other people's donations." I started questioning everything. Maybe they were right. Maybe we were being naive. Maybe helping people without requirements was enabling them. I looked at our records. 37 families helped. 32 were stable or improving. 5 had struggled or disappeared. That's an 86% success rate. But all anyone talked about was the 5. Dominic was struggling too, but differently. "I know how to fix this," he said one night. "We need data, outcomes tracking, success metrics, proof that the model works. We need to professionalize, create systems, show results." He was falling back into his old patterns, trying to solve a human problem with business solutions. We had our first real fight. I told him that the moment we started requiring data and tracking outcomes, we'd stop seeing people as humans and start seeing them as metrics. He said that without proof, we'd never get the funding to help more people. We were both right. We were both wrong. And we didn't know how to bridge the gap. Then Marcus, the first person we'd really helped, the accountant who'd paid us back and proved the model worked, he came to the truck one morning. He looked devastated. "I need to talk to you," he said. My heart sank. I thought he was going to tell us he'd lost everything again, that we'd failed him. But it was worse. "Someone's been calling my employer," he said quietly, "telling them I'm a charity case, that I took handouts, that I'm not reliable because I was homeless. They're thinking of letting me go." His voice broke. I thought starting over meant starting over. I didn't know my past would follow me forever. We found out who made the calls. The blogger who'd first attacked us. He'd gotten a list of people we'd helped, we never found out how, and was systematically trying to expose them, proving his point that helping people like this was dangerous, that we were creating an underclass of dependent people who couldn't really rebuild. Dominic wanted to sue. I wanted to fight back publicly. But Marcus asked us not to. "It'll just make it worse," he said. "I can't afford to be the face of this debate. I just want to work, support my kids, and be left alone." He looked at us with this expression I'll never forget. Not anger, but exhaustion. Maybe that blogger is right. Maybe people like me don't get second chances. Maybe the world doesn't work that way. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what Marcus said, about how the system isn't designed for second chances. It's designed to mark you forever. One mistake, one period of struggle, and you carry that label. Homeless, poor, high risk, dependent. No matter how hard you work to change, someone will always be there to remind you of what you were. I thought about my own journey. How I'd lied on job applications about the 3-month gap when I was homeless. How I never told my employer where I'd been living. How I presented myself as stable, reliable, normal. Because I knew that if they saw the truth, they'd see me differently. Even though my homelessness had nothing to do with my ability to enter data into a spreadsheet. The next morning I called Marcus. "Don't quit," I told him. "And don't hide who you are. Let me make some calls." I reached out to Abigail, the journalist. Told her what was happening. She was furious. Within 2 days, she'd published a new article, "When Second Chances Become Targets: The Cost of Helping People Publicly." Abigail's article changed the conversation. Instead of debating whether second chances worked, people started talking about why it was so hard for people to rebuild, about the systems that punish past struggles, about the difference between helping people and hunting them. The nurse who'd helped us that first night wrote a letter to the editor. So did 3 doctors who worked at Mercy General. So did Marcus's employer, defending him and condemning the harassment. But the real turning point came from an unexpected place. People we'd helped, quietly, privately, with no publicity, started coming forward. Not because we asked them to, because they wanted to defend what we'd built. A woman named Patricia stood outside the food truck with a sign, "Second Chances helped me 6 months ago. Now I'm a nurse. This program works." More people joined her. A construction worker who'd been homeless. A teacher who'd escaped domestic violence. A veteran who'd struggled with PTSD. Each one holding a sign with their story. They created a human wall around our food truck, protecting what we'd built. Dominic and I sat in the empty food truck, watching the last protesters pack up their signs. "We can't keep doing this," he said quietly. My heart dropped. "What do you mean?" "This. The truck. The informal model. Every time we help someone, we make them a target. Every time we succeed, someone tries to tear it down. Maybe we need to stop, or completely change how we operate." I was angry, angrier than I'd been in months. So we let them win. We let that blogger and everyone like him decide that people don't deserve help unless they meet some perfect standard. "I'm not saying that," Dominic said. "I'm saying maybe we need to protect the people we're trying to help. Maybe going public was a mistake." We argued for hours about visibility versus safety, about whether the model could survive if we kept it small and quiet, or if we needed to fight publicly to prove it worked, about whether we were helping people or hurting them by making them visible. There were no easy answers, just impossible choices. Again. Finally, I said something that surprised even me. What if we do both? What if we create 2 tracks? One public for people who want to advocate and fight for change, and one private for people who just need help without becoming a symbol. Let people choose how visible they want to be. We restructured, created Second Chances as a formal nonprofit with Abigail's help. But we kept the food truck too, as a front line, a first point of contact. People could come for food, no questions asked. If they needed more help, we had systems. But those systems were optional, private, protected. You could participate publicly if you wanted, or you could rebuild quietly. Your choice. We also started training, teaching people who'd been through homelessness how to help others, not as volunteers, as paid staff, because dignity means compensation. Marcus became our first employee. Then Patricia. Then others. We built a team of people who understood from the inside what it meant to fall and fight your way back. The model evolved. It wasn't perfect. We still made mistakes. Still struggled with funding. Still faced criticism. But we learned to expect resistance and plan for it. Learned that changing systems means challenging the people who benefit from those systems. And they don't give up easily. 6 months after the crisis, we got a call from an unexpected source. A foundation that worked with formerly incarcerated people wanted to partner with us. They'd been watching how we handled the attacks, how we adapted. "You're doing something most non-profits don't," their director said. "You're letting the people you serve lead. You're building with them, not for them. That's rare." The partnership brought funding, but more importantly, it brought credibility. Other organizations started reaching out. Not to criticize, but to learn. Cities started asking if we could help them replicate the model. We went from being a controversial experiment to being legitimate. It was strange, validating, and a little dangerous, because legitimacy can make you forget why you started. Dominic was offered a TED Talk, a chance to share the second chances story with millions of people. The old Dominic would have jumped at it. But this Dominic hesitated. "I don't want to be the face of this," he told me. "I don't want it to be about my redemption story. It should be about the model. About what works." Through all of this, Lily was watching. Growing up. She was 12 now, volunteering at Second Chances events on weekends. Helping set up chairs. Playing with younger kids whose parents were meeting with caseworkers. One day she asked me, "Mom, why do people get so mad when you help other people?" I didn't have a good answer. So I told her the truth. Because helping people challenges the story they tell themselves about why some people struggle. It's easier to believe people are poor because they're lazy or made bad choices. If they admit it could happen to anyone, including them, that's scary. She thought about that. Then she said something wise beyond her years. But it did happen to us. And we're not lazy or bad. We just needed help. And someone helped us. Why is that controversial? Out of the mouths of children, right? Sometimes the simplest truth cuts through Tuesday morning. Dominic was at the food truck. I was at my data entry job. A national foundation that focused on innovative poverty solutions wanted to meet with us. Not to donate, to invest. They were prepared to offer us $2 million over 3 years to expand Second Chances to 10 cities. $2 million. I couldn't even conceptualize that number. 3 years ago, I'd had $43 to my name. Now someone wanted to give us $2 million to scale what we'd built. Dominic was excited. Cautiously excited, but excited. I was terrified. We took the meeting. 3 executives in expensive suits, though now I could recognize the difference between suits worn for power and suits worn for comfort. These were power suits. They'd studied our model. Read Abigail's articles. Interviewed people we'd helped. They were impressed. "What you've built here is remarkable," the lead executive said. "Small, personal, human-centered. But it's limited. With our resources, you could help thousands instead of hundreds." "What's the catch?" I asked. They smiled. "No catch. Just accountability. Metrics. Reporting. Proof that the model works at scale. We need to show our board, our donors, our stakeholders that this investment produces results." Dominic and I exchanged looks. There it was. The trade-off we'd been avoiding. We spent 3 weeks debating. Just the two of us, late nights at the food truck after everyone else had gone home. Dominic saw the opportunity. We could help 10,000 families instead of hundreds. We could prove that this works. We could change policy. This is exactly what we've been building toward. He wasn't wrong. But I kept thinking about Marcus. About Patricia. About all the people who'd needed help quietly, privately, without becoming data points in someone's success report. The moment we take that money, I said, we stop answering to the people we serve. We start answering to donors, boards, stakeholders, people who've never been homeless making decisions about how to help homeless people. So we turn it down? Dominic asked. We keep operating on donations and hope. We help 200 families a year instead of 2,000. Maybe, I said. If that's what it takes to keep the model pure, to protect people's dignity, to not turn them into metrics. We were at an impasse. Both right, both wrong, both scared of what came next. Then Lily asked a question that cut through everything. She'd been listening from the corner of the truck where she did her homework. Mom, if you could have gotten help faster when we were homeless, would you have wanted that? Even if it meant someone was tracking whether it worked. I didn't have an answer, because the truth was, yes, I would have. If it meant one less night in that parking lot, one less moment of terror that Lily might die, I would have accepted any trade-off. We went back to the foundation with conditions. Non-negotiable conditions. 1. The people we served would be involved in every decision about how the program ran. 2. No drug testing, no criminal background checks, no barriers to access. 3. Success would be measured not just in housing rates or employment, but in dignity restored. And that meant listening to what people actually needed, not what we thought they should need. The executives were resistant. That's not how nonprofits operate at scale, one said. How do you measure dignity? Another asked. Dominic leaned forward. The same way you measure profit. By asking people if they got what they came for. We don't need complex metrics. We need honest conversations. If someone says they feel seen, heard, respected, that's success. If they don't, it doesn't matter what our housing rate is. They wanted to negotiate. We refused. This was the model. Take it or leave it. After a week of tense back and forth, they agreed. With skepticism. With doubts. But they agreed. We signed the contract. $2 million. 10 cities. 3 years. And the hardest work of our lives was about to begin. The foundation wanted us to expand to major cities. New York, LA, Chicago. Places with visibility, media coverage, wealthy donor bases. We refused. We chose cities based on need, not visibility. Detroit, where manufacturing collapse had devastated communities. Phoenix, with its exploding homeless population and desert heat. Cleveland, with its abandoned neighborhoods. Cities that had been forgotten, just like the people we served. But choosing cities was the easy part. Choosing leaders was terrifying. Because we knew, the program would only work if it was led by people who'd been there. People who understood homelessness not as an academic concept, but as a lived reality. We put out a call. Have you experienced homelessness? Have you rebuilt your life? Do you want to help others do the same? We got 300 applications. We interviewed for 3 months. Heard stories that broke us open. A woman in Detroit who'd been homeless with 4 kids, now working as a paralegal. A veteran in Phoenix who'd slept under bridges for 2 years after Iraq, now a counselor. A teacher in Cleveland who'd lived in her car while teaching full-time because she couldn't afford rent. Each one brilliant. Each one scarred. Each one determined to make sure no one else felt invisible the way they had. We launched Detroit First. The chapter leader was a woman named Keisha. She'd been homeless for 18 months after losing her auto industry job in 2008. She'd rebuilt, gotten her paralegal certification, found stable housing. And now she was standing in an empty warehouse in downtown Detroit, looking at me with terror in her eyes. I don't know if I can do this, she said. Yes, you do, I told her. Because you've already done the hardest part. You survived. You rebuilt. This. This is just showing other people how you did it. But I understood her fear. Because I felt it too. We were asking people to relive their trauma in service of helping others. That's not nothing. That's sacrifice. The Detroit chapter opened with a food truck, same model we'd started with. Within a week, the line was around the block. Not just for food. For connection. For someone to see them. Keisha worked 18-hour days that first month. I was terrified she'd burn out. But when I called to check in, she was exhausted but glowing. "You know what someone said to me today?" she asked. "They said, 'You get it. You don't look at me like I'm broken.' That's why I'm doing this, Sarah. So people stop feeling broken." By month 3, Detroit had helped 47 families. Not with our systems or our model. With Keisha's wisdom, her networks, her understanding of Detroit's specific challenges. She adapted everything we'd taught her to fit her city. And it worked. Phoenix was better than we'd imagined. The heat there, it kills. In summer, pavement temperatures reach 180 degrees. You can cook an egg on a sidewalk. You can die sleeping outside. Our chapter leader, Miguel, was a veteran who'd survived 2 years of desert homelessness. He knew every cooling station, every place to find shade, every emergency room that wouldn't turn you away. Miguel's first priority wasn't housing. It was survival. He converted our food truck into a mobile cooling station, drove it to encampments during the hottest hours, gave out water, ice, shade, saved lives first, then worked on everything else. The foundation was confused. "This isn't addressing root causes," they said in a report. Miguel's response: "You can't address root causes if people are dead." He was right. That first summer, Phoenix temperatures hit record highs. Dozens of homeless people died across the city. But not one person who'd connected with Miguel's mobile unit. Not one. Because he met people where they were, literally. Drove out to them. Offered help without requiring them to come to an office, fill out forms, prove they deserved water. He just gave it. And slowly, trust built. People started asking about housing. About jobs. About second chances. But not every city worked. Cleveland struggled. Our chapter leader, Donna, had the experience, the passion, the commitment. But Cleveland's systems were different. More bureaucratic. More resistant. The city required permits for food trucks that took 6 months to process. Shelters had waiting lists managed by a centralized system we couldn't access. Landlords wouldn't rent to people with gaps in their rental history, no matter who vouched for them. Donna spent 4 months fighting red tape before serving a single family. She was exhausted, frustrated, ready to quit. "I thought having funding would make this easier," she told me. "But all it does is make me feel like I'm failing slower." These systems weren't built to help people. They were built to look like they're helping while actually preventing change. We had an emergency meeting. Dominic, me, Keisha, Miguel, Donna, the foundation executives. "Some cities aren't ready for this model," one executive said. "Maybe we should cut Cleveland and focus resources on cities that are working." I watched Donna's face fall. Watched her shoulders drop. She was about to accept being labeled a failure. Again. "No," I said. "Cleveland isn't failing. Cleveland is being failed. By systems that make it impossible to help people efficiently. Donna's not the problem. The bureaucracy is. So we adapt. Again. Instead of working within Cleveland systems, we work around them. Find landlords who'll work with us directly. Create our own networks. Build parallel systems." That's when Dominic collapsed. Right there in the meeting. One moment he was arguing passionately about Cleveland's potential. The next, he was on the floor. Heart attack. Mild, the doctors said later. Stress-induced. Warning signs he'd been ignoring for months. At 53 years old, he'd been running on purpose and caffeine. sleeping 4 hours a night, carrying the weight of expansion on his shoulders. In the hospital, the same hospital where this all started, he looked small, vulnerable. "I'm supposed to slow down," he told me. "The doctors say I need to step back, reduce stress, maybe retire from day-to-day operations." He looked terrified, not of dying, of becoming irrelevant. If I'm not doing this, who am I? I understood that question, because I'd asked it myself in that parking lot 5 years ago. "You're the person who started this," I said, "who proved it could work, who trusted me with $43. You don't need to run everything to matter. You need to let go so the next generation can lead. Keisha, Miguel, Donna, Lily, they're ready. We trained them. Now we trust them." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "That's harder than building a company from scratch. Letting go." We restructured. Dominic stepped back to advisory role. Keisha took over operations. Miguel handled training for new chapter leaders. Donna, despite Cleveland's struggles, became our specialist in navigating resistant systems. And me. I kept doing what I'd always done, connecting with families, listening to what they needed, making sure we never forgot who we were building for. Lily, now 16, started a youth branch. Second chances for kids who'd experienced homelessness or had parents going through it. Peer support. Tutoring. Someone to talk to who understood. She was brilliant at it. More patient than I'd ever been. More hopeful than I'd managed to stay. The foundation was skeptical of the new structure. "You're putting people with lived experience in charge of everything," an executive said. "What about professional nonprofit management?" "This is professional nonprofit management," Keisha responded. "We're just professionals who actually understand the problem we're solving." She didn't budge. With an audit. Neither did we. "Standard procedure," the foundation said. They wanted to review our financials, our outcomes, our processes. Make sure the investment was being used appropriately. We had nothing to hide, so we cooperated. Opened our books. Shared our data. Answered every question. But something felt off. The auditors weren't just reviewing numbers. They were interviewing people we'd helped. Asking detailed questions about their experiences. About how much money they'd received. About whether they'd been required to do anything in exchange. About whether they felt pressured to participate publicly. The questions felt leading, like they were looking for something specific. Then Keisha called me from Detroit. "Sarah, something's wrong. The auditors came to our chapter. They're talking to families, but they're only interested in the ones who struggled after we helped them. The 5% who relapsed or disappeared. They're not talking to the 95% who are thriving. It feels like they're building a case against us." I felt sick. Because I'd seen this before. The blogger who'd attacked us years ago had used the same tactic. Find the failures, ignore the successes, build a narrative that helping people without strings attached doesn't work. But this was bigger. This was the foundation that funded us. If they turned against us, we'd lose everything. 2 weeks later, we were called to a meeting. All chapter leaders. Dominic. Me. The foundation's entire board. 20 people in expensive suits sitting on one side of a conference table. 7 of us on the other. The lead executive, the same one who'd first pitched us the investment, looked uncomfortable. "We have concerns," he began. "The audit had found inconsistencies," he said. "Not in our finances, those were clean. But in our outcomes. They'd identified 47 families across all chapters who'd received help and were still struggling. Some had relapsed into homelessness. Some had addiction relapses. Some had mental health crises. Some had just disappeared. These failures suggest the model isn't working at scale," the executive said. Keisha stood up. 47 out of 3,000. That's a 98.4% success rate. What program anywhere has those numbers? That depends on how you define success, another board member responded. If people are still struggling, did we really help them? Or did we just delay the inevitable? The room erupted. Miguel arguing about impossible standards. Donna pointing out that traditional programs had 30% success rates at best. Me trying to explain that helping people doesn't mean fixing them permanently, it means supporting them through their journey. But the board wasn't listening. They'd already made their decision. Here's what we're proposing, the lead executive said, sliding papers across the table. New requirements for continued funding. Mandatory drug testing. Background checks. Sobriety requirements. Job search mandates. Proof of progress every 30 days. Consequences for non-compliance. In short, accountability. He looked at us. This isn't punishment. It's professionalization. It's what every successful nonprofit does. We asked for time to discuss. They gave us 1 week. In that week, we didn't sleep. We debated, argued, calculated. Because the choice was brutal: accept their terms and betray everything we stood for, or refuse and lose $2 million in funding. Lose our chapters. Lose our ability to help anyone. Dominic was pragmatic. We could accept the terms temporarily, use the funding to build financial independence, then renegotiate from a position of strength. It made sense. It was how business worked. But Keisha shut it down immediately. The moment we require drug tests, we lose the people who need us most. The moment we mandate sobriety, we tell people they're only worth helping if they're perfect. That's not second chances. That's earned chances. And that's exactly what society already does. Miguel agreed. I would never have gotten help under those requirements. I was using when I was homeless. Not because I was weak. Because I was in pain. If someone had required me to be clean before helping me, I'd be dead. I got clean because someone helped me first, no strings attached. Because they saw my humanity before my addiction. But Donna raised the hard question. If we refuse, Cleveland closes. Detroit closes. Phoenix closes. All of it. 3,000 families we've helped is amazing. But what about the 30,000 we could help with continued funding? Do we sacrifice them for principle? On day 6, Lily came to the meeting. She was 17 now, running the youth branch, preparing for college. She'd grown up inside Second Chances. Watched it being built from nothing. She listened to all our arguments for hours. Then she said something that stopped everything. Mom, do you remember what you told me about that night in the parking lot? When you gave away our last money to help Dominic's father. I nodded. You said you didn't do it because it was smart or safe. You did it because it was right. Because in that moment being human mattered more than being strategic. You taught me that who you are when no one's watching, that's who you really are. She looked around at all of us. Right now, you're deciding who Second Chances really is. Not in theory. In reality. You can be strategic and save the funding. Or you can be who you said you were from the beginning. People who help without conditions. People who see humanity first. You can't be both. So who are you? The room was silent. Because a 17-year-old had just cut through all our sophisticated arguments and laid bare the real question. What are you willing to sacrifice to stay true to yourself? And none of us had a good answer. We took a vote. 7 people deciding the future of everything we'd built. Dominic abstained. Said it wasn't his decision to make anymore, he was just advisory. That left 6. Keisha voted to refuse the terms. So did Miguel. So did I. 3 votes for principle over survival. Donna voted to accept. I want to refuse, she said, crying. But I keep thinking about the families in Cleveland still waiting for help. The people we could serve with that funding. How can we choose principle over their lives? She wasn't wrong. There's no moral high ground when people are suffering. That left 2 votes. Our other chapter leaders, James from Seattle and Nina from Atlanta, were newer, hadn't been through the early battles. They looked terrified. James spoke first. I became homeless because of a mental health crisis. Under these new requirements, I wouldn't qualify for help. They'd require me to be stable before helping me get stable. That's not how it works. That's never how it's worked. I vote to refuse. Nina was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, I came to second chances because someone told me I didn't have to prove I deserved help. I just had to be human and need it. That changed my life. That saved my life. If we change that now, we're not second chances anymore. We're just another program with barriers. I vote to refuse. 4-1. With Dominic abstaining, back to the foundation was made. Delivered our answer. No compromises. No negotiations. We would not require drug testing, background checks, or any barriers to access. We would continue operating exactly as we had been, helping people because they were human, not because they met criteria. If that meant losing funding, we'd lose it. The board was stunned. You're walking away from $2 million, the executive said, like we didn't understand. We're walking away from betraying the people who trusted us, Keisha responded. They tried one more pitch. You're being idealistic. Noble. But impractical. You'll run out of money in 6 months. You'll have to shut down. And then you'll help no one. Is that better? Yes, I said, surprising myself. Because at least we'll have stayed true. At least the 3,000 families we helped won't look back and think we used them for funding. At least we'll have proven that a different model is possible, even if it doesn't survive. We walked out, 7 of us, into an uncertain future, with maybe 4 months of operating funds left. No plan B. No safety net. Just principle and hope. It felt reckless. It felt terrifying. It felt exactly like sitting in that parking lot with $43, deciding whether to trust a stranger. The news spread fast. Second Chances refuses millions in funding over principle, became the headline. The comments were predictable. Half the internet called us heroes. The other half called us fools. They chose ideology over helping people. They let perfect be the enemy of good. This is why nonprofits fail. Too proud to compromise. We had emergency meetings with our chapter leaders. Prepared them for possible closure. Started looking for other funding sources. But nobody wanted to invest in an organization that had just walked away from $2 million. We were toxic. Principled, maybe. But toxic. I started updating my resume. Dominic talked about selling his food truck. We were preparing to fail with dignity. Then something unexpected happened. Abigail's article came out. Second Chances chose people over profit. Here's why that matters. She'd interviewed families we'd helped, asked them how they felt about our decision, and person after person said the same thing. They chose us. They chose our dignity over their survival. That proves they meant it all along. Donations started coming in. Not from foundations or corporations. From individuals. $5, $20, $43. People who'd been helped, who wanted to keep the model alive. People who'd never been homeless but believed in what we stood for. People who were tired of nonprofits that said one thing and did another. Within 2 weeks, we'd raised $300,000. In a month, $600,000. Small donations. Thousands of them. A chain of reciprocity. We restructured. Again. Instead of chasing big foundation funding, we built a base of individual donors. People who gave what they could. $10 a month, $20, $50. We called it the $43 Circle. A monthly giving program where regular people funded what we did. It was smaller than the foundation investment. We couldn't expand as fast, but we could operate on our terms. We also did something radical. We paid people we'd helped to become donors. Not immediately, but when they were stable. We asked them to give back what they could, $5, $10, whatever was comfortable. Not as repayment. As participation. As proof that they were part of the solution now, not just recipients of help. The chain continued. By the end of year 3, we had 11 chapters. Not 20. Not 50. 11 cities where the model worked, where leaders were strong, where communities supported what we built. We'd helped 4,000 families total. Not 10,000. But 4,000 people who were seen, respected, and helped without conditions. That was success. Real success. 20 years after that night in the parking lot, Second Chances operates in 67 cities. Not because we chased growth, but because communities asked us to come, and we only went where we could maintain integrity. We've helped over 50,000 families. But more importantly, we've proven that a different model works. That you can help people without controlling them. That dignity matters as much as outcomes. That trust is a better foundation than compliance. Dominic is 70 now. Retired, healthy, at peace. He volunteers at the original food truck on Saturdays, making sandwiches and coffee, having conversations. He told me recently, I spent the first 50 years of my life building things I thought mattered. Buildings, companies, wealth. None of it lasted. But this, what we built from $43 in trust, this will outlive both of us. Lily runs Second Chances now. She's 32, has a master's in social work, and understands the mission better than I ever did. She's taken it further, adapted it for new challenges. Pandemic response, climate displacement, economic collapse. The model evolves. But the core stays the same. See people first. Help without conditions. Trust that humans want to rebuild. Let them lead their own recovery. They built a memorial garden where that parking lot used to be. The hospital expanded, renovated, turned the place where Lily and I sat in the rain into something beautiful. There's a plaque. It reads, "In memory of a moment when two strangers became family. When $43 became 50,000 lives. When choosing trust over fear changed everything." Dominic and I sit there sometimes. On the bench where we waited that night. We don't talk much. We don't need to. We just sit and watch people. Hospital staff, patients' families, people waiting for news about surgeries. Some of them are struggling. Some are scared. Some are at the end of their rope. And I wonder, which one of them will be next? Who will make an impossible choice to help a stranger? Who will start the next chain? Because that's the real legacy. Not the organization. Not the chapters or the families helped or the money raised. The legacy is the idea that spread. That you can choose compassion even when it costs you everything. That you can trust strangers even when you have nothing. That $43 given in faith can change the world. Do you regret it? Giving away your last money that night? Walking away from $2 million? Choosing principle over growth? And the answer is always the same, no. Because I learned something that night that changed everything. I learned that who you are when you have nothing, that's who you really are. Everything else is just costume. When I had $43, I could have kept it. Protected myself. Put my daughter first and let everyone else fend for themselves. That would have been rational. Understandable. Smart even. But I would have missed the most important moment of my life. The moment when I chose connection over survival. When I proved to myself that I was still human, even at the bottom. So here's what I want you to take from this story. You don't need millions of dollars to change the world. You don't need a perfect plan or a flawless model. You don't need to wait until you're stable or successful or figured out. You just need to see someone falling the same way you're falling. And choose to catch them. That's it. That's the whole thing. One person. One choice. One moment of trust. And the chain begins. Somewhere right now, Someone is sitting in a parking lot making an impossible choice. Somewhere right now, someone is deciding whether to help or walk away. Somewhere right now, the next chain is starting. Maybe it's you. Maybe today. Maybe with whatever you have. $43 or 43 cents or just 43 seconds of your time to see someone as human. Be the person who says yes. Be the one who catches someone. Be the start of the chain. Because that's how we survive. That's how we remake the world. One impossible choice at a time. If this story moved you, don't just watch. Act. Find someone who needs help and give it. Not because they earned it. Not because they deserve it. But because they're human and they're falling. Start your own chain. And tell me about it in the comments. Let's prove that this model works everywhere. That trust is contagious. That $43 can change everything. Subscribe. Share. But most importantly, help someone. Today.